I'd like to call the Social Services Subcommittee to order. And Councillor Graham Bunting has sent his regrets in. And has anybody got a disclosure or pecuniary interest in the general nature, therefore? Seeing none, we'll move on to delegations, and there's none scheduled. And then we'll move to number 4, report of the Manager of Children's Services, the federal Safe Restart funding for childcare and early years in Stratford, Perth, and St. Mary's. Move it over to staff.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to have Jeff Wilson, our Children's Services Manager, speak to the report. And just to let everybody know, I do have all 4 management on this call, just because it's been a while since we've got together for follow-up if needed. So, Jeff, if you could speak to your report, please.
Thanks, Kim. So this is just, this report as presented is regarding the Safe Restart funding, which was announced by the federal government and flowed to the provincial governments to support the safe return to childcare, to children to childcare, so that parents can return to work. The amount that the City of Stratford will be receiving is $698,427. The funding is used for procurement of PPE, enhanced cleaning, hiring of additional staff to meet health and safety requirements, and minor capital projects as required by the Ministry of Education's reopening guidelines and public health requirements. And this funding is 100% from the federal government, so there's no cost incurred to the City of Stratford. And at this time, and as our childcare programs have reopened, we've been working with them to identify costs.
We're having trouble hearing you. Your mic or something might be near something. It's bouncing off.
Okay.
If you go back the last two sentences, Jeff.
Sure. Just let me see if there's anything I can do. Yeah, just the last piece is that we've been working with our childcare programs to identify these additional costs associated with reopening, and we'll continue to do so to get them the funding that they need.
Bonnie, may I ask a question?
And then me after.
Sorry. Yes, Councillor Ritzma, please go ahead.
Thank you. So thank you for the report, Jeff. When they talk about hiring additional staff, 2 questions with regards to that. What in particular, what they would be looking for, and when would that posting or hiring take place?
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Ritzma. We'd be looking at additional staff for a number of potential positions. There are enhanced cleaning requirements, so there needs to be more cleaning and disinfection than in the past. Ensuring that that programs and activities are safe requires a higher number of staff to the number of children than potentially in the past. So we'd be looking at that. We also have been seeing additional staff used for screening children as they enter our childcare centers, and then taking them to their respective rooms that they go to. So that's where we see most of our pressures across the system. In response to your question about when we would see that, Across the childcare system in Stratford, St. Mary's, Perth County, we've seen a number of programs hiring staff, and I may defer to Kim and Corey on this, but I believe we are in the process of hiring for Anne Hathaway. Kim, is that correct?
Yes, through the chair, we do have temporary casual teaching assistants posted for supply work at this point, because we anticipate that we will see more illness and needing to bring in a supply staff as this COVID restrictions continue on. So we do have postings for that at this time.
Thank you.
Councillor Vasilakis?
Oh my goodness, Bonnie, you said my name correctly.
I can see it.
My goodness. Let the record show that that is a first. Thank you, Bonnie. Councillor Henderson. I had a question around, do we currently have any before and after school programs running through the daycares, and what the procedure, like, is the coordination of procedures between the schools and the daycares with potential, classroom outbreak, and how the cohorting of students happens if we do have before and after school programs. I'm not sure whether we have those running currently.
Yes, through the chair, thanks for your question, Councillor Vasilakis. We are currently working towards reopening our before and after school programs. A lot of, with the delayed school starts and with a bit of staffing challenges, we've seen most of our programs delayed across the county. I believe that there are a couple of programs, that there are 2 programs intending to open this week, but most are beginning in the coming weeks. As far as cohorting goes, we've been working quite closely with both of our school board partners, with Huron Perth Public Health in the weeks leading up to this, and if there were to be some sort of an outbreak, my understanding is that the before and after school room, that the cohort would be excluded, where the potential outbreak was. But we continue to work with our school board and our public health partners to refine these procedures as we get back into the provision of, as children return to school and we get back into the provision of before and after school care.
And would I be correct to assume that some of that funding that has come through for Safe Restart funding for childcare would also be applicable for before and after school programs?
Absolutely.
It would be under the same umbrella. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? If not, I'm looking for a mover for the staff recommendation that the report Federal Safe Restart funding for childcare in early years in Stratford, Perth, and St. Mary's be received for information. Councillor Burback, motions, and seconded by Councillor Vasilakis.
We don't need a seconder, Bonnie.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
It's been a while.
That's all right.
This is really odd doing this. But anyway, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much for your work on this. Next, 5.1, Social Services Relief Fund, Phase 2 allocation. And who would like to talk about this?
Hi, through the chair, I will have the manager of Ontario Works, Alex Burgess, speak to his report on the second allocation of our SSRF funding.
Cool.
Good afternoon, councillors. Through the chair, we received notice from the ministry in the early days of August related to our Phase 2 allocation for the Social Services Relief Fund. So as you're aware, Phase 1 allocation was received in March. It was announced in March, received shortly thereafter in April. And that was for $1,043,100. They advanced 50% of the allocation initially. They have recently advanced the second 50% of that allocation. There was no business case due with that allocation. With phase 2, they have now requested that a business case be submitted. We did submit that business case on Friday to the ministry for review. So we are just awaiting word back from a multi-ministerial committee that will be reviewing that, that business case that we submitted. They have kept the objectives of phase 2 in line with phase 1. I think they've just formalized them more this time, more than anything. So the 3 objectives I did list in the report: mitigating ongoing risk for vulnerable people, focusing on congregate care settings, encouraging longer-term housing-based solutions, and then enhancing rent assistance that's available to households. So with that in mind, we reviewed and submitted our business case. We focused mostly on the initiatives that I have listed there, which is enlisting the services of a local realtor to help expand the repertoire of affordable rental housing in our community. We looked at short-term housing allowances that will be available. To see the problem with the funding is that it has to be spent by March 31st. So long-term housing allowances are not an option we could look at with this funding, but short-term housing allowances that do address the issues that have arisen due to COVID-19, that is something that we are going to be exploring further. The big focus of this business case, though, was looking at additional outreach support for individuals in the community. So working with agencies in the community to try to support individuals who are accessing services. We currently have outreach support available for individuals from 8:30 to 4:30. After hours, they can contact a phone line, but there is no person that can go out and speak with them. So it is going to be a focus that we look at if our business case is approved. So as we move through, waiting on response at this time, they are talking of holding back a portion of the funding just to kind of see what happens with COVID-19 as we move through. But we will know for sure if we will receive our full funding after January 31st. Another unique thing with this funding that we haven't seen previously is once we have our funding allocated by January 31st, it does have to stay in those fields that we have allocated that funding to. It does give us some time, though, to focus on where we really want this funding to go. And we plan to have all of our plans in place much before then to make sure that we utilize this funding as best we can for the community.
Councillor Ritzma?
Just a question with regards to the first allotment. Alex, was there a time frame on that monies, and was that spent successfully?
Through the chair, there was a time frame of March 31st, 2021 as well, so it had to be spent within the fiscal year. Currently, we still have some of that funding left, but it has been mostly earmarked for increased emergency housing costs. We've been using it for a COVID-19 rent bank, which we rolled out. It's also listed in the report to make sure we earmark funding for an enhanced rent bank. Individuals who may not qualify for our regular chippy rent bank due to income limits, they may qualify for this program, which also offers increased assistance to make sure we keep people housed.
Thank you so much.
Kathy?
Yeah, I had a question. It's a little bit about this money, but a little bit more about housing in general, because I see the local realtor to help expand the repertoire of affordable rental housing. Do we have a sense yet, or do we have any data collected on what is happening, both with our vacancy rates and with the average rents across, Stratford, St. Mary's, and Perth County in response to COVID? Are there additional? I'm just looking about when houses sell and the middle housing, it all sort of cascades down to what's happening in the rental market. But then also I'm thinking of there were a lot of Airbnb type short-term rentals that have they actually come onto the market as rental, and are we seeing an impact in rental availability? And I know that it's not directly related to this funding, but it may impact it as we go into the fall and into early next year. So I'm just wondering if we have a sense of what's happening in the rental market right now.
Through the chair, I can speak directly to what we've kind of seen from the outreach level. So more of what our staff are seeing when they're looking for units. The vacancy rate is still fairly low. I'd have to look back to CMHC to see what we were at before. I understand it was under 1% historically for one beds and bachelors. We are still seeing a struggle to find units, especially affordable units. I know our average market rents that were adjusted most recently for the COB benefit that we are implementing were quite high. And that is what we're seeing. I'll be honest, we thought we might see a bit more availability in units, as you mentioned, with short-term rentals. We're not really seeing that come to fruition as much as we thought we would. We're still struggling to find available units. There's still a strain on the available units that are out there, and there's a lot of individuals competing for those same units.
And so that actually answers my question, and then also brings up my I realize a lot of this funding and what we're talking about today is emergency funding. It has to be spent by a certain date, but always on the back burner is what do we do about bringing more units online, and sort of the status of some of those other longer term projects like phase 2 at Britannia and some of those other things. Not for today's discussion, but on the radar, having some concerns as this drags out, or as COVID drags out.
And through the chair, there was, we did look at capital funding initially with this, with phase 2 allocation, because they did allow for capital through this. Unfortunately, when we looked at the timelines that they placed on it, and also in their own guidelines, they did list that new conventional construction projects that were not currently under construction, they did not anticipate them to be eligible for this. So that kind of that was where we started this process initially for the first few weeks. We explored what our options were for permanent supportive housing, affordable housing, kind of worked through what we could, but then realized with the timelines that they've put on the funding, the reporting structures that are built in, it wasn't feasible for us to turn around a capital project in the amount of time. As for phase 2 Britannia things, I would leave that to Kim to kind of look at and answer. But that is just for this funding. We did explore that, but it just wasn't a feasible project, unfortunately.
That's what I was going to ask about, like, you know, how would we be able to support people, getting together in making sure they have physical distancing. I'm trying to think how you could possibly build something in such a short time frame, you know? I mean, other than putting circles on the ground or, you know, lines, that's about all you could do. Jody, did you have something you wanted to say?
I have two questions. One sort of follows up on the heels of what Kathy asked. Like, as far as modifications possibly for like the capital, does Britannia Street phase 1 need any modification at all? I know that there was some accessibility possibly issues that we were looking at. So I'm just thinking if there was something that was on the list of things that needed to be fixed, that might be something in the capital budget that might, maybe this funding could address, perhaps.
I do not believe that the modifications for Britannia phase 1 meet the criteria within the SSRF funding. Councillor, I was going to say, Eden, are you on the line that you could speak to where we're at with that?
I am. Sorry, wrong mouse. Through you, Chair, thank you, Councillor Burbeck, for the questions. We are in the process of planning phase 2. We have received a different allocation funding program from the Ministry of Housing that we're going to attribute to this. It's called OFI, Ontario Priorities Housing Initiative. We are trying to take a bit of a step back and do a holistic view for the phase 2 plan to look at the unit sizes, what makes sense. You know, we're in a different place than we were 4 or 5 years ago. So what would best meet needs? And also look at some of the amenities. I wouldn't say it was accessibility issues per se. That is a pure barrier-free building. I think there were not amenities put into that building, such as a common room and some storage space. And so that is definitely things we are going to look at, how we can incorporate those amenities into phase 2 to address both properties.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I think perhaps it was like that, the getting into the storage room, I don't know, there were some weird angles and stuff, but yeah, I'm sure that's on your radar somewhere. Thanks for that. My other question actually was about the rent bank, like sort of the COVID-19. What was our uptake like on that? Like, were there a lot of people needing help with meeting their rent obligations that weren't looking for help before? Like, have we had a lot of uptake on that type of help that we're supplying?
Through the chair, we have not seen the uptake as of yet, but in the last few weeks, we are starting to see some individuals reaching out to us that we previously haven't. The eviction moratorium was just recently ended, so we didn't expect to see them in as soon as early August. I think this was more the time we were expecting them. We are starting to see some more individuals call. We're still trying to decipher whether that will be for our original, like our standard chippy rent bank, or through our enhanced COVID rent bank. So we're just starting to see those ones come in, to be honest, within the last 2 weeks. Similar to utility shutoffs, we're starting to get much more contact from individuals who are hearing from their utility companies and receiving their disconnection notices. That's really started in the last few weeks. So that's really, we haven't seen the uptake I think that we anticipated, but we're also just seeing those evictions really start to come out now. I know Eden can also speak to kind of the timelines that have fallen out with the landlord-tenant board and why we're seeing some delays from some landlords with their eviction notices coming out.
Sorry, I also do want to speak through the chair to, we really concentrated on the federal government, the SERB grant, and when that would be ending, because we do believe that will have an impact on the community as well. So some of our timelines were based on that, as well as we were projecting the how SSRF funding would fall out.
And through your chair, just to add to what Alex has said, the eviction moratorium was lifted just this past month. There is an enormous backlog. I can tell you that my staff are sitting on about 35 LTB hearing cases that we have not heard dates for, so that they've submitted and the paperwork. So usually when they come into Stratford, they maybe on a good day, they'll run through 10 cases. So we get them every 6 weeks. There was already a backlog. So there may be a number of individuals who haven't received their eviction notices yet. But I will tell you that across the province, it's not just with our own housing. We did see a spike in arrears. I think people mistakenly took the messaging from the province as they didn't have to pay rent. It was not a rent holiday. It was a moratorium on pursuing evictions, but the rent that was due during that time. So we've done a lot of communication with our own tenants through the social housing stock to really, try and connect them with the SERB, connect them with the rent bank and that kind of thing. But I think now we'll see more. And obviously we have an ability to adjust rents if income changes in our rent geared to income housing. That is not the case in the private market. So we really, Alex has purposely increased the threshold a little bit for the rent bank because we want to target that group of population who may not necessarily qualify for RGI, but we don't ever want to see down the road in our,
So have these people, have you seen them start to pay their rent now?
In housing, we've been working with those who have fallen a little bit behind just to make sure we've got their up-to-date income paperwork so that we can adjust their rent accordingly if someone lost their job, for example. So we've been seeing the numbers go down a little bit. I think the first 2 months when people lost job, it just took a little bit of time. But yes, for our...
Any other questions? Okay, just a minute, I'll get back to my agenda here. Oh, what's going on here? Just a minute, well, that's weird. So the staff recommendation that the report titled Social Services Relief Fund Phase 2 allocation be received for information. Kathy is moving that. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Is there any other new business or concerns anybody want to bring forward, or Judy?
Yeah, this is just more of a general question. I know that we were renovating the area that we receive clients, and I was just wondering how that's going.
Through the chair, it's going well. The renovations are going well. It is my understanding that it's on target, but we are looking upwards of March 2021 for the completion.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Thanks.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me this question the other day, and this is how I answered it, and I want to make sure I'm right. At 230 Britannia, as people move out, do we just take people off the original list before we advertise again?
No, Eden, you can help us through the chair. No, we don't. We do advertise. There's
Oh, okay.
for Britannia, it is an advertising.
Oh, okay. All right. I was wrong then.
Yeah, through the chair, we do not have maintain a waiting list for those units, and
Okay.
we did not have. We were able to through a process of attrition, but we did have a couple people who we had applications and who may have that we would reach out to, but no, we're just doing an advertisement for the units that we have available there.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else. Look for adjournment. Kathy, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.